Last week I burned out. After 2 years of relentless work, long hours, and pushing myself, I hit a wall. The fact is, I think a lot of Asian men experience burnout by perfectionism and cultural expectations. And the purpose of this video is to share my own personal experience of burning out and examining really how cultural and personal factors contributed to that burnout. And let's just talk about actionable steps to recover and redefine success. Burnout is a state of chronic stress that leads to physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion, unrealistic pressure, unrealistic expectations. So my burnout story is that I've been working this position for the last 2 years. It's been very high-paced, challenging, lots of different tasks that are coming at me from all different directions. I regularly can work up to 12 hours a day, skipping meals and sacrificing personal health, such as not exercising. It was horrible that I end up waking up, spending the entire day in the office, going back home when the sun's already down and not being outside. Tipping point came when basically a week and a half ago, the night before a presentation that I had to give, I worked until 10 p.m. in the office trying to get ready for the presentation. Even before it started, I was a little bit late, so that was kind of a rocky start. Any mistake that I was making, I was kind of amplifying in my own head, and I would see the disappointment maybe, and then it would actually get into a negative cycle where I wasn't able to rebound and just focus on the details that really mattered. Presentation was subpar. It did not meet the expectations of the supervisors that were in there. Really, I left that meeting feeling very depressed and even just demotivated to do anything else. And then on top of that, one of the coworkers that I had in there was highly critical and then pointed out every small mistake that I was making, and afterwards was demanding a lot of things from me when I wasn't really in the mental, emotional state to follow up. I ended up talking to my supervisor, calling her, and just said like, hey, I can't take this anymore, and I think there's a lot of negativity that is built up. I can't continue on like this. I just have to leave. What I had to do to address the burnout was, first of all, being self-aware enough to understand that I was reaching a breaking point, and that I was getting negative enough that I really wanted to like kind of punch a wall, or to the point where I might even hurt myself. But there was a lot of frustration that I wasn't able to process at that time, and my thoughts were basically very clouded. But just having enough self-awareness to say that, hey, this is a situation where I need to step away is important. And the number two is seeking some type of support, understanding that there are people in that room that weren't empathizing with me, and they just saw it at face value of that I wasn't performing at that particular time, but didn't see it from my point of view. So I had to go think about who in my basically support structure was going to able to kind of provide that mental, emotional support for me at that time, so I could kind of rebound slowly. So that was reaching out to one of my supervisors that I knew was more understanding and able to understand me, because she had more exposure to the type of work that I was doing. So that helped a lot because she was understanding. She helped give me a little more perspective about, hey, what matters is you and not necessarily this job at this point, and let's just take care of you. So that helped me to recage myself. And then being able to step away is also important. Like sometimes, especially with what happened during the COVID lockdowns, is that you realize that there's some things that just really don't matter. Like, yes, we get into situations where we feel like we have to do it. Everything's urgent, everything's important. But then, like what COVID showed us, is that a lot of things don't have to happen. So you can step away for a little bit. It's not a life or death situation at that time. And just going away for a walk or going to get a drink of water, that's okay. And then using tools. So I used ChatGPT to ask some really difficult questions that I often don't have energy to ask. Things like, what is burnout, and what can I do to address that? Are there certain beliefs that I'm holding on to that contribute to me adding more stress and anxiety? And those things, being able to see that, and ChatGPT lays it out pretty well, like all the individual steps or points that make it easier to digest, and so that I don't get looped up in my own thoughts. That was useful to just kind of see that, and then what are some more constructive ways to deal with it. As a takeaway for this video is that we oftentimes as Asian men end up feeling like we have to, there's only a very small area where we can succeed, and that generally means that it's career, because our value is rooted in our ability to contribute to society and to the family. Instead, sometimes what we have to do is remind ourselves that we have to prioritize self-care, that we have to prioritize self-respect. Self-care, self-respect is something that each person should be able to exercise. Self-care would be take care of your health, whether that's mental or physical or emotional, taking the time to make sure that you are good to go before you go to work, take care of your own interests and things that you want to do before maybe taking care of other people, so that you are charged and in a state to be able to help them because you're in a good place. That is not selfish, and I think that's something that we have to prioritize more. And this second piece about self-respect is that you have to respect yourself. Like, this feeling of needing external validation to feel good enough is something that I think contributed to my overemphasis on someone else's opinion of me. So I would emphasize or maybe exaggerate someone else's criticism, and I would take it personally, because the external validation was what gave me my self-esteem. But really what we need to do sometimes is just to decide for ourselves that we're going to respect ourselves no matter what, and that regardless of if we do a great job or not, that we deserve self-respect, that we have value at a core level. The other piece is just communicating expectations and setting boundaries, because boundaries is not something we get taught as kids, and oftentimes we feel like as a perfectionist also that we have to do everything and then try to please everybody, try to avoid conflict and create harmony as much as possible, which might lead us to saying yes and overextending ourselves way too much. And setting boundaries is saying to yourself, this is the amount of hours I'm going to work, these are the projects I'm going to do, and I can't do any more. And communicating that to other people and just letting them understand that this is what I can handle at this time, and that is valid. And that you have to respect that this is how much I can contribute, given that I have other parts of my life that I have to take care of as well, and being able to make sure that that person respects your boundaries, doesn't try to disrespect you in front of other people. And if they do, you have to be very vocal and assertive, not aggressive, but assertive, in reaffirming what it means to respect you in front of other people. And even if you make mistakes, that it's not okay for them to condescend you in front of other people. Reevaluating values is something that I had to do. And sometimes failure gets you to do that, because whatever you're doing just isn't working. You try to keep pushing, add more energy, add more time. But at a point, there's a certain point that it just doesn't work at all. And that's that breaking point that I experienced last week. And that's good in some ways, because you start to reevaluate what is important to you and not necessarily what is important to everybody else and how they define success. And for me, during that week, what I found was that I really value more personal time to work on projects like creating a video, helping other people, that is not necessarily tied to my job, but is more about building up other people's self-worth and able to handle maybe some of the weaknesses that they have. Spending more time with family, spending more time taking care of myself. And that is more important than working all the time. And then redefining success. Like, what is success? Is success only just about moving up in your career? Is it just about doing endless amounts of projects, so that sometimes is there even a point to it? Is there a purpose? I think success sometimes just means not necessarily doing the perfect job, but then making some progress in some way that you define as important. So for example, just being able to present in a clearer way, like being able to speak with more eye contact. That could be a personal goal that you set for yourself, and then you go out and try to work on that. That is defined as success as well. I know that a lot of Asian guys can put themselves in a situation where they're more easily burnt out. And that is based off of feeling like your value is based on more on your contributions in your career and what you do at work versus other areas of your life. And that can create a sense of over importance to the work that you do and your competence. And so that can create a lot of anxiety and stress about particularly in your work life. So the call to action here is just to really take the time to reflect, maybe reevaluate your values and your priorities, to include taking care of yourself and deciding here and now to respect yourself no matter what. So your value isn't tied to what you do, but who you are as a person. Taking care of yourself is not being selfish. It's important for you to then be a person that can really give to the world.